I won't tell you. I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do here. Give an overview of the current business reality, give you some food for thought, some discussions, and then some questions and answers. So business reality number one, you take any business in the world, private, public, not-for-profit, they have three basic needs. They have a need for finance, they have a need for performance, and they have a need for image. And there are people in the decision-making process who specifically tie into that. And in most cases, you'll say it's by their title. I can tell you over the course of my career that I've run into many a CFO who has far more image needs than they do financial needs. And I've run into far more COOs who have far more finance needs than image needs. When you deal with a company, one of the best ways to deal with this particular animal when you're talking with a group, if you ever deal with the founder of a company, they will not want to talk about the finances, they will not want to talk about the performance, but they want to take you for a walk down to how the company was founded. Their image needs about the company and their view of it is so important that you need to keep that in mind whenever you have a conversation with them. Now, business reality too, again, you break any business in the world down, this is what they have to do. They have to increase revenue, decrease expenses, retain employees, improve employee performance, retain business, and have succession planning. Again, very few businesses do all of these at any one point in time. And if someone were to ask me right now, Joe, where is the biggest weakness? It's in succession planning. And I have a whole presentation on that at some point in time. I'd be happy to talk with you about it. But you would be amazed how many people don't think down to tomorrow. And that has to tie into the old confusing strategy with tactics. Business reality 3, all managers have 3 basic responsibilities. You have to improve performance, you have to manage the expenses, and you have to manage or lead the people. And this is where the plot thickens. I don't know about you guys. I know in the course of my career, I've talked to more managers who said, God, I love this job, but I hate the personnel issues. Well, guess what? That's the job once you move into management. Because the performance, the goals that somebody set, they have no opinion. Managing expenses has no opinion. In the world of COVID, helping to lead people, not just manage them, has become more complex than ever. I mean, we had somebody's little child just made some noise. We're all kind of used to that. I have a favorite story of Bishop Sheen. Most of you are too young to remember Bishop Sheen. Was giving a sermon one time, and there was a baby in the front row was crying, and Bishop Sheen looked down and said, don't take the baby out. He's not bothering me. And the mother said, Bishop Sheen, that's not the problem. You're bothering him. And how many of us have had pets walk across our screens at this point in time across the board? So it's dealing with the people, with those personas that we all have. That's the difference between management and leadership. Peter Drucker, who was the ultimate guru of management. Management is doing things right. But Peter also defined leadership as doing the right things. So you have to look more than the policy manual and look at the people. Think about music when you think about these two things. Management is a symphony. If you've ever been to the symphony or watched the symphony, you know that those players are all playing off a specific set of rules against a specific set of timing being run by one particular person. There's no improvisation in Beethoven. This is how the music was written. In management, that's the policy manual. Managing by the policy manual works until the first person asks a question about it, because leadership is jazz. And you have to be moving flexible across the board. Now, you can't play jazz unless you understand symphonic music, but you have to be able to be flexible to situations. In fact, I would argue to you, my colleagues, that as we move through this now chronic sense of what COVID has caused, there are 3 things that are going to have to be rebuilt: empathy, trust, and flexibility across the board. Because how many of us, our lives have changed and have now settled into a new reality? This is a real nice, simple way of looking at the difference between leadership and management. The boss says, go ahead, the leader says, follow me. In fact, about 20 years ago, Theodore Roosevelt finally received his Medal of Honor for the charge up San Juan Hill. And the reason he got it was they found a diary from one of the soldiers who was there. And what TR did was ride out in front of all of his soldiers, pull out his saber and say, follow me. So food for thought. When it comes to working these things, too much emphasis is placed upon hiring, training, and promoting based on competencies at the expense of creativity. We all get this owner's manual and we hire someone and we give them this owner's manual and say, we want you to do this, without taking into account that in a knowledge-based workforce, bringing creativity to the job brings excellence. Now, I'm not talking about violating policies, but it's encouraging people to bring their own creative sense to what's going on. How much creativity have you put into your job in the last year? Basically in our business, because we just can't see people face to face anymore. And we're all dealing in healthcare, which is the most social business in the world. We have too many competencies. The list you see here, some work that was done at the Wharton School, by about 35 years ago in cooperation with a company called Developmental Dimensions in Pittsburgh. And what they broke down was you could take any job in the world, and these basic competencies have to be there in varying, in sundry different ways. For example, if you're hiring a salesperson, you want to make sure they have good oral communication skills. If you're hiring someone to work in a planning process, you want to make sure their problem analysis skills are there. But in sundry ways, every job needs these things. Now, the ones that are highlighted in red are my own opinion from the years of doing this, that there are only 3 things in here you can't teach somebody how to do. You cannot teach work standards. You cannot teach someone how to do a good job. You can teach job motivation, but you can't teach how. God's got to put that in there to have a sense that things are going to be done. You can't teach somebody to be resilient. If someone can't get over a problem, you can't teach them to do that. And you can't teach people to be tenacious. Those 3 things have to be in there. Everything else on this list, you can put a training program and teach someone how to do it. You can teach someone how to dress. You can teach someone how to talk. You can teach someone how to write. Food for thought 2. Is the feedback given to employees regarding their strengths really strengths? And is the feedback given to employees regarding their weaknesses really weaknesses? Is there anybody on this call who has either liked doing a performance appraisal or getting a performance appraisal? I mean, it is literally about as much fun as eating a piece of strawberry shortcake through a screen door. You're just going to have some kind of reaction back and forth here. Look into what a person's strengths are. What do you do well? It's just like in a business. What does your business do well? What keeps you from doing more of that? Find the strengths of your employees, then you'll get that extra mile out of them. This is I'm going to show you 3 graphs here from a paper written in 1974, originally by Robert Katz. This work has been redone 4 different times based on the scenario of how business has changed over the last almost 46 years now across the board. What Katz did was graph out what do you need to have to be skillful in a knowledge-based workforce. Now, if you could picture this as a 3-dimensional graph, when you first hire someone, you want them to have a lot of technical skills. You want them to have a healthy amount of people skills, but you don't really need them to have a lot of conceptual skills. It doesn't mean you're hiring stupid people. Just think of it, when the general yells charge, he doesn't want the soldiers to say, gee, I really wonder what he means by that right now. You want to have people with very strong technical skills when you start. Now, as I show you these 3 graphs, people skills will always remain the same percentage. In fact, even go up. I don't know how many of you are looking at your little computer right now that we call a cell phone, but it's a computer that we actually talk to. And everything in a knowledge-based workforce is sitting in there right now. Every MD degree is sitting in there. Every MBA is sitting in there. Every law degree is sitting in there. My bride's PhD in nutrition is sitting in there. I don't want to say that too loudly. She's in the other room. But the fact of the matter is there are 2 things that are not in those computers: people skills and critical thinking. And in a knowledge-based workforce, people skills are irreplaceable. In fact, I would argue to you, my colleagues, there is only one business in the world where people skills are not important, and that is being a hitman for the mob. Because the person who hired you doesn't want to know you, and the person who's doing it doesn't want to know you at all. Everything else involves a people skill. Now, those of you who are in middle management, this is the basic reason that middle management is hell. Because you have to have a certain percentage of schizophrenia to do it. You have to have more technical skills, you have to have more people skills, and you have to increase your conceptual skills. If it's any value to you, when I was in middle management back in the Old Testament, I used to use this graph. When one of my people reported to me would say, you don't understand my job. And I would say, you're absolutely right. I'm not paid to understand your job. You're paid to understand your job. My job is to put you in a position to be successful. Now, how can I help you do that? And I share that with you. It might help you at some point in time with an employee counseling session. Now, when you get to the senior level, and this is why, what is it, Undercover Boss, and a book written in the late 1980s called In Search of Excellence were probably two of the most horrible things ever to happen to business. You don't need a CEO with a lot of technical skills. If you want a CEO with a lot of technical skills, go look at the presidency of Jimmy Carter, who would spend the entire night reading the entire briefing book, then come to the next day for the meeting and was too tired to make the decision. You need lots of people skills in the senior level, but you need lots of conceptual skills. That's where the strategy lives. The CEO has to be looking down the road. Where is this business going to be, and how do we get there? Or where are we right now, and how do we sustain where we are? That's the difference between management and leadership. So how do you execute the process of improving this thing? First off, value the people in your organization as a true asset and more than your largest expense. Invest in developmental programs that enhance personal understanding to help nurture people and conceptual skills. And if you're a small company, and most of us are, you can't afford to do this, someone who's really invested in their own career, there are a lot of online things you can do now for free or for a minimal amount of cost to enhance your skill sets. And then create team experiences to expose people to technical expertise and the implications of their colleagues. And again, we're really learning this now as we deal more and more with this, we only see each other from the shoulders up kind of thing world. In fact, one of the best ways to help team experiences right now, if you can get either a Gen Zer or a college kid in your life right now and talk to them about the learning experience, they are a treasure trove of knowledge about how to use this thing. I happen to work with some young people in a program that teaches them about philanthropy, and we're doing it all virtually, and I am learning things from them. It's amazing. And I highly recommend the Gen Zers because they started with this stuff from their lives. I'm so old, I still carry a pocket watch and a fountain pen and think email's the coolest thing that was ever devised. Now, you have to value the people, really value the people who work with you. I love this quote from Andrew Carnegie. This was actually testimony that he made before the Peugeot Committee in 1910, before there was any income tax. The Peugeot Committee is what created the IRS. You can now spit at the screen anytime you want. But Carnegie said, you can take away my machinery, burn down my buildings, and confiscate my land. But if you leave me my people, I'll be back in business in a year. It all comes down to what the people are doing and how valued the people feel. That's the difference between leadership and management. Now, this is an important thing. I love the bell-shaped curve. You can explain the entire universe with the bell-shaped curve, because no matter how you look at it, everything has a top, a bottom, and a middle. All great businesses are run by having great people who work in the middle. Let me explain what I mean by that. Most managers fail by emphasizing the people who are the failures. And what happens when you do that, the laws of physics take over. The top people stop paying attention to what they're doing because they kind of start saying, well, I've got to be okay, they're not paying attention to me, and they don't grow their skills. Don't worry about the bottom people. Work with the top people and the middle people. Because once in a while, when you have a good middle third performer, they're going to hit everything. They're going to hit all the cylinders, and they're going to have what we call in sports a career year. Nurture them, build an environment where the top people and the middle people want to be there. The bottom people will say to themselves, I don't belong here, and they will move themselves out because they won't feel like part of the atmosphere. That's the difference between management and leadership. So how do you execute the process? Invest in yourself. Use some self-assessment tools. If you're a CEO, join a CEO membership group. I have no relationship with Visage International, but I know friends who have used them in small businesses. And if you can, engage a personal professional business coach. Nothing wrong with growing. And then always avoid the smart talk trap. This is a great paper. You can download it from the Harvard Business Review. The smart talk trap is when you get into a meeting when everybody knows all the buzzwords and nobody does a damn thing. Death by buzzwords. I'm seeing heads going up and down right now. Friends of mine and I, about 10 years ago, created a buzzword mix and match bingo game about all the things that you needed to say at any point in time. In fact, I can tell you on every Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, I have a virtual cocktail hour with my grown children and their families. And the Smith family across the United States has decided that the word unprecedented is no longer allowed to be used in our family. Go on. Just you got to get some words out. Pivot is on the photo if we're going to. But avoid the smart talk trap and really hold people accountable for two reasons. One, leaders hold people accountable. And two, when you ask people questions like that, you're actually valuing them and they can feel valued. So what does a good leader do? Here's the coda. They know how, they know and do their own job well. They have a bias for plain language and simple concepts. They frame questions by asking how, not just why. They have strong mechanisms to close the loop. They follow up and they believe experience is the best teacher. This is what great leaders do. And last but not least, one of my favorite quotes from Ted Levitt: a mousetrap isn't better because it includes an electronic rodent counter or a cheese freshness gauge. It's better because it does a superior job of catching mice. Know what you do, put your people and yourselves in a situation to succeed, and it's really hard to fail. So questions, comments, observations, threats?